Buongiorno and welcome to Jaxx Vane Studio Live number 19. We're live 3 times a week on Twitch and working on sailing, foiling, simulation game. Prototype, we're still in prototype stage. So yesterday was an interesting day. It was a very productive day. I worked especially on the physics. And I watched some race and listened to a couple of very interesting podcast interview. And one of the main difference and compared to what I was convinced of was regarding to the speed at which this boat will start foiling. In some race, I heard something like 12, and then in an interview, I've heard something like 18. So I tried to implement this kind of values, and I found that the behavior is so much better. Everything is much smoother now. Because before I had this kind of obsession of trying to let me get out from the ghost. From get the boat to foil at super low speed, like 8 or something like that, and that forced me to basically put very aggressive foils on the boat, which made the behavior quite twitchy, and now with the new values everything feels smoother. There are still a couple of things that I need to understand, but I think they are correct. When the boat is going with the wind, is going in, with the wind at back, whatever that's called. Where if I'm closing the wind with the wind at the back, the boat tends to roll strangely, but the more I look at it, the more it makes sense to me. The kind of behavior that is exposing. So I'm not particularly worried about that. So the plan for today is really working on something. I'll try to make this corner as if this ghost was real. So I'm going to turn around it. I'm going to try take a wide corner. You might notice also on the top of the screen I have indication of boat speed and true wind angle and velocity made good, which make everything easier. Right now the boat is like incredibly stable. Like right now I'm not really controlling it, especially the foils are pretty stable. So yeah, as usual, I'm scared that the driving is too easy. Although, if I start to think about all the possible strategic elements that could be put in this, including zone where the wind is changing and so on. Even from a tactical point of view, it becomes an interesting game. But I really want the driving to be a little bit more engaging than this, to be honest. So, what's the plan today? The plan today is really to move to an architecture that will resemble more closely the final architecture of the game. So my hope is that by the end of this stream, I will be able to load multiple boats that won't do anything, will just sit there. Because right now, the entire software is assuming this one single boat with one single ghost boat for the entire duration of the game, and of course this cannot be true. And I thought that the more I start to work on things like UI and so on, the more, if I don't put the game in a state where it really resembles what the final game will be, the higher the price is going to be when I'm going to try to change everything and make sure that the game is able to actually run with multiple boats, and you have a concept of who is the boat with the focus. And potentially you could also have no boats, which is something that, for example, is a price that I always paid in my games before, like both with Netcar and Assetto Corsa Competizione. There was always, especially Assetto Corsa 1 had this assumption that there was this boat 0 that was the car number 0 that was the player car, and that was something that the entire game was counting on. So a lot of subsystems were designed with this concept of having car number 0 is the player car, and it's always there, right? So that was quite complicated to change in Competizione, and it was small little bad behavior that kept hitting us more and more during the development. So this assumption kept biting us because it was difficult to find all the places where this assumption was actually used, especially in the physics for Competizione. But what we discovered in both games was that when we tried to implement multiplayer, it was always a pain, because when you work on a game and you're always assuming a single player game, then try to stick multiplayer on the top of it. It's going to break again a lot of assumptions that you do. So the idea, I remember talking with Kevin about this, with Kevin Starkis, one of the developers in Assetto Corsa Competizione of the multiplayer side. And we were always saying, if we could start from scratch, we wouldn't make this mistake, and we would work on a game that things is running in multiplayer, even if it's running in single player. And this is exactly the lesson that I want to bring here in this project. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. And hopefully I will explain down the line what this means. Unlucky shot. I am on the wrong side of the boat to see this. I want to see the mark. That's pretty cool. Probably, I hope you can notice how much smoother the movement of the boat is. I think it's a combination of two elements. It's both the actual foils that don't really have that much lift anymore. So the entire behavior, there is much less energy going on in the boat. So when it's moving in a more controlled fashion. And the other thing is probably the mouse control, which especially in turning, I find the mouse control to be so much better for now than the gamepad. Really, really much better. Anyway, let's, I see a question, so, and then we get to work. Can the water receive forces, so when you are next to each other, the water waves both produce influences on the other boat? It surely can, but you know, you're talking about step 1500 and I am like step number 19. So yeah, it could be many months from now. I hope that I will be able to concern myself with this kind of game design. All right, okay, so what's the idea? The idea is that right now we have the game, which is the sim level, which from now on I will be calling it, well, in theory, the client. Thank you very much, Ampus Merling. Thank you very much. So we have this game. What it really should be at the end of the day is a view over a simulation state. So the idea is that something else is producing this simulation state that has all the information and position of all the boats, where the wind is, and whatever information is relevant to the game. And something handle this to the game, to the sim level, and the sim level only job is to render it. And thank you, Ampus Merling, for the follow. So that's the role of sim level, which right now it has, with a couple of exceptions, right? Then we have another element, which is our, and Marcos Bistro, thank you very much for the follow. Another element is the physics thread, so the physics simulation. So ideally, you can imagine potentially this simulation even running on a different PC. So what is happening is that the simulation run an integration step and send the result over to this client, and then the client will render it. And the two are detached, they're separated. So the simulation is running on its own thread, and it's sending this data to the client, and the client is rendering. Now, what we're going to do today is introduce another element to the picture, which is something that I will be calling the ServerGame. Now, the ServerGame is another interface that is going to be hidden behind the physics avatar, or probably I'm going to rename the physics avatar ServerGame. So what is going to be is basically is going to be the only thing that the level is going to talk to, and this thing is going to abstract basically if you're running a multiplayer game or if you're running a single player game. Sim level will only be talking with this entity, and this entity will do its own stuff, whatever is in multiplayer or single player. So, and another important thing is that the initialization, the way everything gets initialized at the beginning is going to be remarkably different, because what is happening right now is at the beginning is right now, when I initialize this sim level, what is happening is that I'm initialize this boat avatar. So I'm creating the boat avatar, which is the representation of the boat. Every time you see the word avatar in my game, that's what it means. It means is the representation of something that is actually calculated somewhere else. So it's creating the sea avatar. It's creating somewhere the location, which is basically, you can think about like the level where you are. So here you go. Here is creating the location, and then somewhere is also and then it's sending. So it's creating the boat avatar, and then it's sending an information to the physics system telling the physics system, okay, now create a physical boat, right, in the simulation. So from when this message arrives to the physics simulation, the physics simulation creates the boat, not the graphical, the physical boat, and from now on, every simulation state that will receive will contain also the physical information of that boat. Now, this thing is going to drastically change, because you can imagine that this can never work. This can never work in a multiplayer. In a multiplayer situation, you don't do something like that. You don't, well, at least you shouldn't really create your own boat and load level and so on. Think about the level. When you connect into a multiplayer game, the server should tell you what the level is, right? Now, in Assetto Corsa, for sure, in Assetto Corsa, this information was available before the simulation was even loaded. So we had two programs. One program will look at the server list. The server list will contain the information of what track we're running. And when the simulation will start, we'll just read a file that will tell what track to load, and it will do that. Here, everything is going to be way more flexible, where basically what the simulation is, what the level is going to do, the level is going to start, and it's going to ask this server game, like, you know, I want to start a game, a single player game, or a multiplayer game. This is the boat that I would really like to use, and initialize it like that, and then it will start receiving game state information. The game state information will contain the information of what is the level that we're playing on, right? And at that point, only at that point, the actual level will load the location and so on. But this hopefully will become more clear as I work on this. It's somehow clear in my head, but it could. Right, so if all works, we should see a game state with one boat called Jaxx of model boat 1. So let's see. Yep, there you go. Okay, cool. Right, okay, so now we're ready to move on and kill this magic boat avatar. So this goes away, and we can have a new boat avatars. No, I can't. It's been weeks that I haven't been fighting with the border checker. See, this is I totally understand now. I'm going to rave about the border checker. I don't want to do that. But this is valid code. And now I should be able to call update data. Right? You happy now, Rust? Come on. Right. Now, is happy about this one. Next one. It's so frustrating. Right. This builds, but I'm very unhappy. I'm incredibly unhappy. That was like, what was it, 30 minutes of borrow checker. Oh, war. I'm not happy. In theory, we should have physics now. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So we have physics. Okay. So this is all working, and we are all super happy about this. So I need to solve this spawn matrix. Okay. Whoa. That was a lot of work. So now we should be back in our original spawn position. Yep. With the physics doing weird stuff. It was just all right. So we walk all this way to come back where we started from. I don't think the ghost will be here. We also have the ghost. Interesting. Down. All right. Did I win? Yeah, I think I win. Can celebrate the end of the stream with a win. You had it? Oh, oh my god, what was that? That's new. Holy shit, that was new. All right, let me try. Cool. Ah, you put the controls. You put the controls. I don't understand what the other thing is. Ah, it's in the inside of the controls. Cool. Very, very cool. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for following this stream. I'm going to close now. Remember, if you watch on YouTube, you can follow this stream live on Twitch if you want. You can subscribe or follow there, or just watch the recaps on YouTube. Next stream is going to be next Monday with a little bit of continuation of this, and my plan is to start working on the graphics a little bit more, especially the water. So have a good weekend, and I will see you next Monday. Ciao, ciao.